right, so the first thing you want to do is you're going to wrap your plaster mold in newspaper. If you don't wrap it in newspaper, then it's going to stick to your slab. So I'm just kind of wrapping it around. Where the newspaper ends, you want to make sure to tape the newspaper to itself. You never want to tape it to the mold. I want to just tear off any excess or just really squish down the newspaper at the bottom. I really want that to be flat because I don't want it to leave any marks in my slab. So I just like to kind of actually do a little crisscross with my tape. It just kind of makes sure that there's really not many lumps or bumps. Then what you can do is just with the excess newspaper on the top, just tear it off. You want to be able to slide the plaster mold in and out. That's really important. If your plaster mold gets stuck and we have no way of getting it out, we have to sometimes cut into your mug. So before you even wrap your slab around your mold, make sure that your plaster can slide out of the newspaper. You want to have a slab that's about 1/4 inch in thickness. It's sometimes good to even have it a little bit thinner. That way it doesn't make your mug quite so heavy. But that 1/4 inch thickness is about where you want to be. So I like to just run over my slabs with a metal rib. This just kind of helps finish smooth anything out, any last lumps or bumps. Now that I have my slab ready to go, I need to outline my mold. So you'll notice that it kind of rolls in a curved shape. So you want to kind of follow that curve, and I like to cut just a little bit extra on the top and bottom. That just kind of gives me some wiggle room. All right. Then I can just cut off the excess with my needle tool. And I just want to cut this edge straight. So once I'm ready, I'm going to wrap this slab around the mold, and then I'm just going to cut off the excess at the end. Where it overlaps, I need to get rid of this excess clay. So what you want to do is using your needle tool, you're holding it in a capital Q shape. I recommend writing that down in your notes so that you remember. You want it to be this way. If you cut it this way, it's going to be backwards. So holding it in that capital Q, you want to cut through both layers, but be sure not to cut too hard that you cut through and damage the plaster mold. Now you're going to remove the excess. And you'll find that your slab fits together perfectly. Now you're going to slip and score this together. So you want your slip to be about the consistency of chocolate milk. And I'm just going to come through here and I'm going to score both edges. I recommend when putting this together, if you push your thumbs together with some pressure down, you're going to find that you get fewer fingerprints. That's one of the difficulties of working with soft slabs, is that they're going to show up any lumps or bumps if you're not careful. So I'm just going to kind of push this together, and I really want to smooth that seam out. Now, if you used a slab with texture on it, you might find that you lose some of that texture in this joint, but it's really important that this joint is really secure. All right, once I have that joint attached, I'm just going to cut off the excess. Remember that these need to be 4 inches in height, minimum. You can have them taller, but you don't want them to be any shorter than that. So what I like to do is if I get a needle tool, before I cut the top, I like to just measure from the base, 4 inches, all the way around, so that I can make sure that it's even when I cut it. Once I'm ready to cut it, I can just join up those dot to dots and cut a nice, straight, even line. I recommend putting your scraps of slab to the side for your base, but if you find that you don't have a scrap that's big enough, you're going to just want to roll an extra slab for that. So you're just going to place your mug onto the slab, and using the needle tool, you're just going to carefully trace around. So now I'm going to cut this out. And I want to slip and score this onto the bottom of my mug. Something you want to consider is the more score marks you make, like if I score all the way through here, I've got to take more time to smooth it out because any of those cracks and crevices could be a breeding ground for bacteria. So I recommend just scoring the area that you need, kind of that 1/4 of an inch around the edge. And if you're worried about it, you can kind of push back the newspaper a little bit if you're worried about it kind of getting stuck in there. Now, I never ever work on my table directly if I know I'm adding slip because it could cause this to stick. So I'm just going to place some paper underneath. I'm going to add my slip. I'm going to add my slip on the bottom as well. And I'm going to place this onto the base. And I want to ensure that it's really attached well. So I'm just going to really take some time to blend all of this clay and kind of push it so that it really is securely attached. The slip will make everything even more plastic and kind of delicate. So if you kind of want to wipe off some of that excess slip, you can. The key with all of this is being very delicate so that you don't create a bunch of lumps and bumps and fingerprints. All right. So now that that base is attached to the cup, I'm going to remove the mold. And I'm going to remove the newspaper. If you find you have like a few little pieces of newspaper, don't panic because it'll burn off in the kiln anyway. So now we need to blend the seams. And what I like to do is just add a reinforcing coil at the bottom. So I just add some slip at the bottom. I'm not going to score it. I'm just going to slip it because this is still all plastic clay. And I'm going to roll a small coil. And I don't need the coil to be too thick because the thicker it is, the more I have to blend. So I kind of want this to be like the thickness of a needle tool. And I'm just going to carefully place this inside the cup. It gets a little bit fiddly. I'm just going to cut off the excess. So using the curved end of a spoon or a wood modeling tool, you can blend that. And at first it's going to be kind of challenging to blend. You want to really support the outside so you don't bust through that seam. And I just want to blend it so it has a nice curve at the bottom, and that there are no areas that could collect bacteria, so it's really smooth. And I take my time on this because I really do want my mug to be food safe. Remember, that's one of your objectives. Once you kind of have everything as smooth as possible, so I just take a damp brush and I'm just going to smooth the bottom out with some slip, just to make sure there really are no lumps or bumps or cracks or crevices. I'm going to use the curved end of the wood modeling tool, or like I say, you can use the curved end of a spoon, and I'm just going to blend the seam against the wall of the mug. Really take your time on this as well. Make sure you support that outside seam so you don't bust through it. I'm going to take the damp brush and just finish smoothing that out. I'm just going to do that along the outside edge as well. At this point, you've added slip and everything's a little bit delicate. So I recommend let it sit for a couple minutes to get leather hard before you try to smooth out this lip rim. While you're letting it sit out, you could start building your second mug. All right, once you let it sit out for a few minutes and it's a little bit more secure, you're going to take slip on your fingers and you're going to really smooth around that lip rim. You really want it to be rounded. This is really important because if it is flat at all, you're going to find it's more challenging to drink out of. So you want to smooth around that lip rim so that it's completely rounded. It's no longer flat on top. Once it's smooth and rounded, I recommend adding your handle before you add your decorations. If you're doing, a texture on the outside that you rolled through the slab roller, well, your textures are already going to be on